Welcome to the Global Peace Film Festival Lives Online Conversation 2021 Festival Edition. Please join me, Kelly Devine, the Artistic Director, and Nina Strike, the Executive Director, in conversation with Samuel George, the Director of Out to Vote. You can find out information about how to see Out to Vote as part of the Global Peace Film Festival by visiting our website at peacefilmfest.org. Our limited in-person screenings begin September 21 and run through September 26. Our virtual screening programs begin September 27 and run through October 3. Now, let's join and welcome Samuel George. Hi, thanks for being with us again.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much. And hi to Nina as well.
Hi, Sam. It's so good to see you. And we did this last year, so we're so happy to have another of your films this year. So let's start out. Tell people watching this about Out to Vote.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I'd love to just start out by saying what a pleasure it is to be back with the Global Peace Film Festival. I mean, I really admire, of course, your film selection, but also your kind of broader goal with what you're trying to do with this festival. And, I'm so happy that I'm going to be able to come down there this year. And it's going to be my first kind of trip for a festival outside of the DC area, really, since this pandemic crisis began. So I'm very excited that could be Global Peace. And I want to thank you for having another one of our films. This one, Out to Vote, I think it's obviously a topic that's ripped from the headlines, and that's concerning voting access in the United States of America. Who gets to vote? How hard do we make it for people to vote? And those kind of questions. It takes a more specific angle, and that's about formerly incarcerated individuals regaining the right to vote. And it's filmed in Baltimore, Maryland, and Maryland is kind of a contrast to the rest of the country. A lot of the rest of the country is taking these steps to make it so more and more people can't vote, or it's harder to vote. Maryland, on the other hand, thanks to the tireless work of activists, has made it easier for traditionally marginalized groups to be part of the democratic process. Specifically, a couple of years ago, they made it so that formerly incarcerated individuals could vote. And in fact, when that first law came into place, there were a whole bunch of strings attached that said, well, if you were on parole or if you were on probation, you couldn't vote. And that made it very complicated for people to understand when they were eligible and when they weren't. In 2015, overriding a governor's veto, they actually made it so that if you're out and if you're not in prison on a sentence, you can vote. So that was already done before this documentary began. What this documentary does is, in the lead up to the election, it follows those people that have fought to regain that right. You say, okay, well, what are they doing with it now? And what it is, it's a group of leaders. Could they become community leaders for democracy who have regained the right to vote and now are becoming democracy and voting advocates in their community. And they're fighting to engage people in the democratic process. So it's really about, we see this trend towards limiting democratic participation. What are the benefits? And I'll tell you what, not just to them, but to us as a society. What are the benefits to society when more people feel engaged in the democratic process? And it's a kind of documentary where we kind of just in bed with them for a couple weeks. It's the weeks leading up to the election. And we kind of follow what kind of things they do during the day, what kind of challenges they face. And I think hopefully my goal is you get to know them a little bit as people, and perhaps some folks will come away with a different understanding of what it is to be a formerly incarcerated person.
Well, Sam, I want to thank you for your kind words about our work at the festival. We couldn't do the work that we do without the contributions of filmmakers and like yourself. So thank you right back. And you touched on the importance of this story, but can you talk about, from the standpoint both as personally as a filmmaker, what your approach to this story that you had taken is, as well as your work as part of the Bertelsmann Foundation? How do they choose the different subjects they want to bring to light?
Yeah, that's such a wonderful question, and I'm very happy that you give me the chance to talk about the Bertelsmann Foundation. because I have very happy to have this position, and part of it is making documentary films for the Bertelsmann Foundation. We're a nonprofit organization. All our outputs are always free to the public. And the idea is that we're interested in issues of transatlantic interest, something that's going to be important in Europe and the United States. And we see that democracy, almost anything can fit under that, to be honest. So I can try to be more specific. We often think in terms of democracy, we think in terms of economics, and we think of in terms of social issues. And, it doesn't have to always show both sides. For example, this is just shot in the United States, but this idea of democratic participation is very of strong interest in both Europe and the United States. So it's really the kind of project that Bertelsmann Foundation would be interested in. What makes us unique is under our recent leadership, led by our executive director, Irene Brom, she's really been willing to pursue these new ways to visualize this stuff. It's not just a 15-page report that only appeals to certain scholars, but rather it's let's bring more people into the conversation. Let's make this topics that are so important tangible. And under her lead, we've really been able to get into things like video, graphics, and things like that. So if you have a chance to check out the movie and you like it, you might like some other things by Bertelsmann Foundation. So maybe check that out. Now, the more specific question about this project is, how did we end up filming this? And there's a lot of serendipity, and I think you're going to hear that from a lot of documentary filmmakers. For me, elections were always opportunities to tell a story, and it's something that we at Bertelsmann Foundation, we've done a series of documentaries about elections. We did one about the 2018 congressional election in West Virginia. We did one about the 2018 presidential election in Mexico, about the national elections in Latvia and Italy. So this was sort of something that we had some comfort level, and the reason is clear. There's sort of a built-in narrative when there's an election. You have somebody running for office, and you have society interacting with these different problems. And so obviously I felt like this election was going to be an opportunity that I didn't want to let pass. In terms of the timing, we had just finished a major project that year, Go-Go City, which is a documentary that's almost a sibling of this project and is coming out soon as well. So we didn't have the kind of time to prepare in advance what exactly we were going to do. Then the second problem was, of course, this is the coronavirus era that we're living in, and we needed to do something kind of close to Washington, D.C. So I just kind of looked at a map and said, what could I, that's where we're based, the Bertelsmann Foundation, based in Washington, D.C., and budgetary issues and coronavirus issues, things like a hotel or someplace to stay was not really going to be on the table. So what could we travel to and come back in any given day over a series of weeks? And Maryland fit that description. So I began putting out feelers of what I could do with Maryland. This specific project, I met Bobby Perkins. That's the individual right here. Randomly, I had been in touch with this organization, which is called Out for Justice. And it's not a coincidence, the Out to Vote and the Out for Justice. We very much follow the work of Out for Justice in this documentary, which is led by this woman, Nicole Hansen Mundell, who's a fantastic activist and leader, nonprofit leader in the state of Baltimore. So I was aware of their organization and was going to talk to them for this project, but in sort of a separate coincidence, I met Bobby, and I just started hearing about his story. And I was just blown away. I was absolutely blown away. I mean, you're talking about, first of all, a guy that was in prison for 37 years. I'm 36 years old. So this is an individual that was in prison before I was born. That's such an astounding amount of time, but it had come out with so much personal wisdom and knowledge that he gained, and then just really dedicated himself to spreading the word about democracy, and had clearly found some sort of meaning in life to be part of the democratic process. Something that he always felt like wasn't tangible to him suddenly became tangible to him, and it just really kind of sparked the second life for him. And I said, this is the story. I want to work on this story. And then, of course, it's much broader than Bobby, but it was through that kind of lucky meeting with him, and then, getting to know the organization better and developing a mutual trust that I was able to follow them in the weeks leading up to the election. So that's a very long-winded answer, but
No, it's fantastic. And you mentioned Bobby's wisdom, and that makes me think about one of the wonderful things that we've observed in talking to filmmakers is that uh, making a film is always or almost always a learning process for the filmmaker. There's always something that surprises you or that you gain from the process. And we'd love to hear if you had a similar experience.
yeah, well, I mean, I think first of all, just the resilience of these individuals. I mean, a lot of my first answers to this almost sound cliche, but it's really true. I mean, most people out there, when you say formerly incarcerated individual, they probably have a stereotype that pops into their mind. And like most stereotypes, that's almost uniformly false. You're talking about individuals that have, you know, done a lot, maybe made some mistakes, but maybe done a lot of things right, and have really taken the chance to make the most of their second opportunities, and that have so much to offer society. And you think about, what do we gain as a society? The other thing that you learn is just how many people are exposed to the criminal justice system. I mean, it's so thorough, and so many people are exposed to the criminal justice system. And if you don't give a path for that massive amount of society to be a part of, our different institutions, what message are you sending, and what are we going to become when somebody, and you see this in many areas, that people become disengaged from politics, and this is one reason why. I mean, because they're not invited to be a part of the process. I actually think, though, the number one thing I learned is sort of a reflecting back on the fact, when this whole crazy election ended, there was this like interpretation that was given, especially on certain avenues of the internet, that something shady happened, that somebody tricked somebody, that somebody took advantage of the voting process, especially in these liberal cities. Somebody did a dirty trick, a dirty game. And that was such a shame, because my perspective is that this election was something that we as a country should have really, really been proud of. That in the face of this, once in a lifetime pandemic, a once in the century pandemic, the United States rallied to pull off a very, very difficult election, precisely because individuals featured in Out to Vote and seen in these pictures wouldn't let anything stop them, and pounded the pavement and made sure that every single person was taken to the poll. It's a story we should really be proud of as a country. And I was so sorry to see after the fact this kind of false narrative take hold, and probably still, I think to an extent, many Americans still look back and view that election as something didn't quite right happened. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think that it's something that we should be proud of, and is an example of American democracy. I mean, no election is perfect, but the ability to do what this country did is something that, and I'm just sorry to see the efforts of so many people get tarred that way. So you say, what did you learn? Well, I feel better about the democratic process because I saw so much of it happening. And I was at the polls in Baltimore on election day and in the days before election day, and everything was 100% by the book. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for that, because all too often we have a tendency to discuss these kinds of issues trying to correct the negative. And
Yeah.
and I was so thankful to hear you emphasizing the positive.
Right.
And I agree. It was astounding that we had such a fantastic turnout, considering all of the health challenges, and that we rose to meet them. And that shows the strength and the willingness of the American people to embrace democracy if you give us half a chance. And what your film, Out to Vote, demonstrates is this portrait of activists, people who are going into their communities and working to make them better, more just, more peaceful places, which of course is the central mission of our festival, to offer these models, to offer stories of inspiration that people and our audiences can carry back with them into their lives and into their own communities. And certainly the Bertelsmann Foundation, they must have a mission also in terms of impact. And if you might discuss that from you, your viewpoint as a storyteller and the foundation?
Yeah, well, that's another good question. I think that what we as the foundation, as I view, at least in my little corner of the foundation, what our goal is, trying to expand the nature of the conversation. I think it's so fundamental that in these incredibly critical times, everybody feels that they can be a part of the conversation. That these decisions about our policies and about our future aren't just made in the power centers of Washington or the financial centers of New York or the tech centers of San Francisco. That you deserve to have your voice heard. And so that's really what we try to do with these documentaries. When I first started this documentary, it would be 9 experts and 1 person, on the street selling newspapers. And I would stop and say, what do you think about what all these experts just said? And again, massive amount of credit. And even that was like, for a Washington think tank, we're a Washington think tank, right? I mean, that's already, the fact that we had a camera was like kind of pushing the limit. But again, the credit to the Bertelsmann Foundation and to Irene Brom, our director, for saying, I actually want to know what more people on the street. And what if we were to go out of this capital city? Because we started doing this more internationally. Now it's much more in the US. Well, what do they think? What's their opinion? And I think that her kind of concept is creating this 2-way conversation of giving an avenue where, I hate to use a word like normal people. What does that even mean anymore? But people that aren't policy elites, people that aren't setting the agenda but are impacted by the agenda. I think that's a better way to say it. People impacted by the agenda have a chance to say, hey, look, this is how this is affecting me. Again, I think there's an element of the Bertelsmann Foundation that wants to keep this conversation transatlantic relevant, because we have a sister organization in Germany, really the mothership. I don't mean to gender those positions, but these partner organizations and headquarters in Germany. And we're really saying that, the kind of issues that we're seeing, whether it be migration or attacks on democracy, these are transatlantic issues, and we can learn from each other. And one thing I shy away from in my work, and some people don't like that about it, is I don't really try to give the answer. I'm not sure if that's the value add. For example, I mentioned the other documentary about gentrification I did, Go City. It's much easier for me to reveal the issues, the underlying problems, than it is to say, this is how we fix it. But I do think it's really important that if we're going to have these conversations, we need to have a clear idea of what we're talking about. I was very happy last year to have Swing State, Florida screened at the Global Peace Film Festival, and to do events with the festival throughout the year on like the fields of Immokalee, which is about undocumented migrants, farm workers. And the idea there was, if we're going to make undocumented migrants like a major push of how we're voting, can we at least have an honest conversation about it? Can we at least really show how this is playing out? And so, that's kind of what I look for in our work. But I'm sure, there's a handful of specialists at the Bertelsmann Foundation. I'm sure you get a slightly different answer from any one of them that you ask. But definitely, it all fits on this ecosystem. And I would encourage folks to check us out at www.bfna.org, or specifically our film work at bfnadocs.org.
Well, I'm glad you brought up both Swing State, Florida, and also your next film, Go City. We're very happy that the Global Peace Film Festival has been able to share your work, that we were able to share Swing State, Florida, both as a whole and also specifically the Fields of Immokalee chapter that's basically takes place in our area in Central Florida. So tell us how audiences watching this can support the work of your work and the work of the film part of the Bertelsmann Foundation.
Well, definitely check us out at BFNA Docs, and the B at Bertelsmann Foundation North America. That's where it comes from, bfnadocs.org. And there you're going to find all our documentary films. And again, the cool thing is, as a nonprofit organization, there's no paywall, there's no nothing. They're all there for free. And if you say, well, what can you do to help? Feel free to engage with us. Let us know what you think. If something strikes you as interesting or something maybe you disagree with, The idea is we're trying to start a conversation here, and we're all about engagement, and we're all about talking about it. And another way you can help is, we've been doing a lot more with different organizations like teachers and universities and social groups that want to arrange a screening of a film and then have a conversation afterwards. We love that. Always free to use our films. You don't even have to bring us into it. I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm happy to come talk about the film. But if you just want the film, we're happy to share that as well. So really, just kind of check us out and spread the word is the #1 way.
So, and finally, what's next for you? We know, Out to Vote is now out. Go City is on its way out. What happened? What's on the agenda for you beyond that?
Yeah, well, in terms of the documentary stuff, I have kind of 3 projects right now that are in different stages. You have the Go City and Out to Vote, which are complete, and now it's more about how do we get it out there and how do we make sure people see it and hopefully have that kind of impact that we hope for when we make it. Over the beginning of this year, I spent a lot of time filming steel workers on strike in, somewhat rural Western Pennsylvania. And that's sort of my next big documentary project. And the idea there is, again, to get out into these voices that we don't sort of hear, this sort of blue collar, disaffected, frustrated workers in Western Pennsylvania. And I filmed that strike. It was a strike that went on for a few months, and I would, go out for a couple days every other week, and ended up with just this huge pile of footage. Most of it not very good, but I've been really spending time now just painstakingly going through it and trying to put it together in an honest, reflective story. And that's what I'm working on now. This is this doesn't look like a lot. This is probably about a month's work right here. Other sketches, but that's how it comes together. And then in early October, we'll go to edit, and hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have a new product out, and that's one element of our work. In the Bertelsmann Foundation, we do a lot of work with animations, which is, I'll write a script and then we'll work with animators to bring it to life and different kind of graphic stuff. So yeah, that's what it keeps us busy. It keeps us very, very busy.
Well, that's marvelous, Sam. And we will definitely be checking in with you to see the progress on this project. And thank you, as always, for sharing your time and your thoughts with us. We really appreciate the relationship that we've had with you, and look forward to it continuing.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I can't wait to get down there and meet folks in person. I mean, Nina, we've met before, but to meet the rest of the team and to actually be a physical part of the festival in a couple weeks. And I really hope for folks watching that are able to join, we'd love to see you come out the evening. I believe it's September 24th, the evening. That's correct. Thursday, September 24th.
That's correct.
Come join us. It's going to be a conversation afterwards. It should be a good time.
Indeed. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
And again, thank everyone for watching this particular interview. If you want to learn more or follow the progress of the Bertelsmann North America Foundation, please go to bfnadocs.org. That's bfnadocs.org. And of course, to find out more information about all the programming for the upcoming Global Peace Film Festival, please go to peacefilmfest.org. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next Glow.